Hello, I'm Anthony David Hobbs, aka A.D. Hobbs, and this is my film review of the movie Halloween, and this is my third attempt. I've tried it twice before and it hasn't come out on YouTube, so third time lucky. Okay. Anyway, let's start at the beginning. In 1974, John Carpenter directed a tight-budget sci-fi film called Dark Star, which was awful. It's a terrible movie, and the small budget really does show, It's a sci-fi comedy with jokes that are not very funny. I mean, it's impressive considering John Carpenter was only about 26 when it was made, but the film itself is not very good. 2 years later, in 1976, John Carpenter directed Assault on Precinct 13, which is a huge improvement on Dark Star, although that's not saying much because Dark Star was so awful. Anyway, Assault on Precinct 13 is a totally different story to Halloween, but the style is very similar, yeah. There isn't that much violence in it, but the violence we do see is very sudden, so a lot of suspense in it. On Assault on Precinct 13, John Carpenter directed it, he wrote the story, and he wrote the music as well, so he was very dedicated to the project. Plus the movie was on a small budget, yes. Yes, when something's on a small budget, it costs less money to pay one person to do several different things. And in the same way, in Halloween, John Carpenter directed, he co-wrote the story, and he wrote the music as well. Now, there's going to be some spoilers, so if you haven't seen Halloween, watch this review after you've seen the film. The first spoiler is the opening sequence. We see a babysitter get stabbed to death, but we don't see what the killer looks like. We see from the killer's perspective the way the camera moves. We just see a hand stabbing a half-naked woman with a knife, And then afterwards, we cut, the camera moves around and we see what the killer looks like, and it's a 6-year-old boy, and it's like, oh my Lord in heaven, that is very controversial, very disturbing, yeah. And why did Michael Myers is the name of the killer? Why did Michael Myers kill the babysitter? Is it because he's mad? Is it because he has an unhealthy obsession with Halloween? Maybe he was pretending to be a killer and then did a killer thing for real. Or could it be this? Could it be that John Carpenter resents the babysitter? He's very angry with her because she's supposed to be looking after him. What's more important than making sure he's safe? Having dirty premarital sex with her boyfriend upstairs. And he resents her for that. How dare you put your priorities like that? And consequently, he loses it and stabs her to death. But is he mad? Did something happen that drove him mad? It's not really specified. All that is specified is this. When he killed the babysitter on the night of Halloween, it traumatizes him. And he hasn't spoken for 15 years. So, and the movie was made in 1978. He's now grown into a man. He's 21. And because he's 21, he's a fully grown adult and has to be transferred to a different mental hospital or some technicality like that. And the character of Michael Myers, also known as the Shape, they don't call him Michael Myers that often. It's more often than not just Michael, But anyway, get to the point. The point is he wears a mask. That was always in the story, And at first, the filmmakers were thinking of making him wear a clown mask, which would have sort of been symbolic because on the night he killed the babysitter, he was dressed as a clown. But no, they changed it. They made he wears a Captain Kirk mask. I say Captain Kirk, but it's a very bad resemblance, And the filmmakers, they got the Captain Kirk mask from a costume shop. They painted it white and made the eye holes bigger to make him look like a creepy sort of bumbling zombie, like an emotionless killer, Which was quite a good look. Yes, he does look like a creepy zombie, wearing a Halloween mask on Halloween. But I remember thinking, why didn't they get the prop department to make the mask? Why buy it from a costume shop? Well, because it's on a small budget, is the simple answer to that. A very small budget. They didn't film at Halloween. No, the movie was made in the summertime. So they had to have big bags of leaves and scatter leaves all over the ground to make it look like it's autumn. Yeah, because time is money. And you can't afford to waste any time when it's such a small budget film. The only thing that cost any money was Donald Pleasance. You know, he was the only famous actor when the film was made. You know, and Jamie Lee Curtis, who I was already very familiar with her. Yes, because I'd seen many of her films. I'd seen her do comedy films and feel-good factor films, but never a horror film. So yes, I was quite impressed with her performance. Yeah, she is a scream queen. She does a job excellently, and it was just ironic when I first saw the film. The credits say introducing Jamie Lee Curtis, and she was like this household name when I saw the film. She wasn't a new, but yeah, okay, it's her movie debut. Yeah, and oh yeah, a few other things I'll say about Halloween. Well, this thing I'm going to say is not about the movie itself, but about the Halloween day. When I was a child, I wanted to go out trick-or-treating, and my mother said no, because it's blackmail. You can't... that's horrible. How dare you? You can't blackmail someone into giving you a treat. Otherwise you'll play a trick on them. Blackmail is wrong. I asked my father if trick-or-treating is okay, and he said no. Because if you go trick-or-treating, a bad man might take you away and kidnap you. So, okay, a very good reason not to go trick-or-treating. So when I was a child, I never went trick-or-treating. I did go to some Halloween parties, but never did trick-or-treat, you know. And also, trick-or-treat is really an American thing. At least it was for some time. And then in the 80s, it started to catch on in England. Much to the dismay of many parents. They didn't like that it was catching on. They thought, no, it's an American thing. We don't want it over here. Go away. We don't want trick-or-treating here. No. Is trick-or-treating wrong? Is it evil? Does it teach kids to be nasty? Or is it just harmless fun? Well, it's debatable. You make your own mind up, you know. But it's certainly very disturbing in the movie Halloween, yes. It's the darker side of Halloween. You know, instead of playing harmless pranks, yes, he's going around killing people. So, yes, he's clearly taken the obsession with Halloween much too far, yeah. And, there is dry humour in this. The best example I can think of is there's a scene where not Jamie Lee Curtis, one of her friends, is phoning up her friend Jamie Lee Curtis, and she's being strangled by Michael Myers. You know, usually he stabs people with a big butcher's knife, but he uses whatever's available. In this case, he strangles the blonde woman with the telephone cord, and Jamie Lee Curtis can hear her on the other end of the line choking to death. And she thinks it's a joke, because it's Halloween. She thinks it's a prank. You know, Halloween is the day when everyone plays tricks on each other. But the joke is that, no, it's for real, you know. So that's very creepy. And, of course, there's a scene afterwards. At first, Jamie Lee Curtis is in denial, then realises, no, it's not pranks, that there really is a killer out there. And she runs in the streets screaming, help me, you know, somebody help me, you know. And there's loads of houses. People can hear her screaming for help. But nobody attempts to help her, because they think it's a joke, because it's Halloween. If you hear someone screaming, it must be a joke, because it's Halloween. So yes, very dry humour, yeah. I mean, you don't want to get attacked on any day of the year, but the worst day to get attacked is Halloween, because people will assume it's a joke, you know. And, yes, the movie Halloween did remind me a lot of the movie Psycho, you know, this mentally disturbed, crazy man, you know. And Michael Myers, I suppose you could say in a way, is even creepier than the character in Psycho, because he never speaks, you know. That makes him very elemental, very mysterious. A bit like the bogeyman, you know. And, well, in America they call it the boogeyman, in England we call it the bogeyman, which put simply means an elemental supernatural creature that scares the hell out of people and can appear and disappear. And in the same way, Michael Myers, he appears omnipresent. You know, he's always there. He keeps appearing and disappearing mysteriously, you know. And he never speaks. Michael Myers hasn't spoken for 15 years. He never speaks, which in a way is cool, because it makes him strange and mysterious. But then how are we supposed to know anything about him, you know? Well, that's why they have Dr. Loomis, played by Donald Pleasance. He explains all he can about the character, and of course he warns the authorities, you know, this crazy man, this psycho has escaped from a mental home, you know. And he says, well, he doesn't, to make Michael Myers a bit more mysterious, he reveals some, but not too much, about the mental patient. He basically says that Michael Myers, I spent many years trying to rehabilitate him, and the other years trying to keep him locked up. He is beyond help. He can never be, you know, rehabilitated. He's just pure evil, you know. Oh, and speaking of pure evil, The opening sequence, when there's a pumpkin, like literally the very beginning of the film, a pumpkin with unblinking eyes, well, obviously unblinking eyes because it's a pumpkin, it's a bit like a metaphor for the killer, you know, this relentless desire to kill, there's nothing stopping him, you know. And yes, after seeing Halloween, I didn't look at pumpkins the same way again, because I associated them with, the image of Michael Myers, yeah. And Michael Myers is a relentless killer, yes, he gets stabbed, he gets hurt a few times, but he keeps coming back up again, you know, yes, the desire to kill is so great that there's nothing stopping him, you know. And Halloween had many imitators, yes. Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street and Scream, very Halloween-esque, very like Halloween, yeah. Oh, and I'll say this, I wasn't born in the 70s, I can't remember them obviously, but I remember being told that some people thought there was too much sex going on in the 70s, just this shameless, you know, sex going on everywhere. Because, of course, contraceptions were more widely used and everything. But people would say, no, it's still wrong, even with contraceptions, because people giving it away so easily like that. And in a way, Halloween is like a metaphor for that. If you have premarital sex, you deserve to die, you know. So, yes, Michael Myers kills people just after they've had sex. And, well, no, he kills people in general. But more often than not, babysitters that are having sex when they're supposed to be looking after children, because he's reenacting what happened on that night when he was a child. Yes, he kills neglectful babysitters, basically, you know. And Jamie Lee Curtis, in the story, she's the virgin, therefore smart, and therefore doesn't deserve to die. And I don't think you deserve to die because you've had sex, but that was the metaphor, you know. If you've had premarital sex, you deserve to die. And this idea was popular throughout the 80s in horror films. Anyone that has too much sex must die, you know. It's that simple, you know. I don't know if that formula would work today. No, I think that's a bit old-fashioned. You know, a lot of people openly admit to having premarital sex, so it's not such a taboo subject now. But just go with it. Halloween was the late 70s, and then in the 80s it was a popular formula that seemed to work, yeah. Oh, speaking of popular formulas, there's a scene in Halloween when Jamie Lee Curtis, her friend, has just had sex with her boyfriend, and he goes to get some beers, but before he goes, he says, "I'll be right back." Now that one line has been imitated in other horror films. It's basically, there's this rule: no matter what happens, don't say "I'll be right back" in a horror film, because you won't be back. You know, yeah. And Halloween, it was on a small budget, but in a way that was a blessing in disguise, because they made the most of what they had, you know. I mean, some modern horror films, it's just non-stop gore all over the place, you know, and it's not very frightening, because it's not very unexpected. It's just boring. Oh, another person's been killed, oh, another one, no. It's boring, you know. Whereas in Halloween, there isn't that much killing of, but when it does happen, it's very sudden, very in your face, very quick, you know. So it's all about suspense, you know. Not that much killing, actually, but when it does happen, it gets you off guard, it's really fast, yeah, and really unexpected, yeah. So, yeah, the suspense was done brilliantly. John Carpenter's music score was brilliant. It perfectly captures the mood of the film. The first time I ever heard that Halloween theme, I've heard it many times since, but when I first heard it, yes, very creepy. It's sort of like the deepest, darkest desires of a creepy killer, you know. It's very eerie, very creepy, yeah. Okay, well, I'll end this by saying, oh yes, are the sequels any good? Well, in my opinion, Halloween 2 was the only half-decent sequel. The others were just sort of milking the moment a lot, you know, just basically telling the same story over and over again. So Halloween 2 is okay, Halloween 3 is silly because Michael Myers isn't in it, and the rest are just telling the same story again and again. So, if you're in a light humour, see the sequels. If you're not, then don't. And, oh yes, John Carpenter, because Halloween was such a big hit, after he directed it, his name was always attached. He got top billing to other films he directed. You know, a few years later, there was John Carpenter's The Thing, John Carpenter's The Fog, John Carpenter's Big Trouble in Little China. You know, it would always have his name above the title of the film, you know. So, yes, folks, this is the guy that directed Halloween, so it must be good, you know. Because Halloween was so successful, yes. So, or if his name was attached to a project, people took interest, you know. So, yeah, that movie was the making of him, yeah. So, I don't know too much about the sequels, but I do know that I highly recommend the first Halloween film. So you must see it if you haven't already, and you'll see what all the fuss about John Carpenter is. Yeah, okay. Okay, that's enough from me, and take care.